let me know.
Yeah.
And then, because, I mean, well, I'm assuming we'd want it in somewhere in the spring, but it's still already time to plan and
All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Okay,
Yeah, have a great
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's gonna be a nice kind of intimate group, which is great. My name is Nicole Silvetti, and I am your school counselor. Tonight we have Liz Ripking here. She's the founder of Cyber Safety Consulting, and she's going to talk to you about technology, social media, and how to keep your kids safe online. So without further ado, Liz.
Okay, hello, thank you for coming. I know how difficult it is to escape out at 5 o'clock at night. I appreciate it because I know there's a lot that goes in to getting out of the house at this time. And I know that because I have 3 kids of my own. I always like to tell you a little bit about me before I ask you to trust me with the information and what I'm going to be telling you about. I have a son who is 21 years old. He is in his 4th year at Marquette in an engineering program. And this is when you all look at me and you say, no, you can't possibly have a child that's 21 years old. And I do. Then I have another son, Ian, who is just sort of set off on his way as a freshman at University of Illinois. And then I have a daughter, Maeve, who is a sophomore in high school. So I have lots of qualifications to do what I do. I started as a technology consultant. I've done a lot of technical training, development, and delivery, working with groups, teaching. But probably my greatest, strongest qualification is that I'm raising 3 kids, just as you are. So I talk a really good game. If you came to my house, you may not see all the things I talk about actually being implemented, but that's sort of the beauty of it, is that we do the best we can. And my job tonight is to give you as much information as I can, education about what the challenges kids are facing, strategies that you can implement, suggestions on how to have conversation at home. So conversation is probably my greatest goal of this event tonight, is to give you the tools and the knowledge to establish an ongoing conversation in your home. I feel very strongly that this is a topic that kids need regular conversation about. It's like sex. Okay.
So 6th grade year.
6th grade. So we call it. So is that year? I'm learning that
Year
6th
seven.
grade, year 7. So 8th grade, year 9. Is that what? Oh, so when you said same year 9, I was like, no, she said 8. But it's
7th grade.
okay. Got
year
it.
8.
Yep. How about you?
I have an 8-year-old.
Okay, which is year
4. I get confused between myself. I always worry I said the wrong one.
year. So that's 3rd grade.
3rd grade.
Okay. We got to Americanize everything for me. And do you have a student here, or you?
No, I'm the principal, but I do have 2 teenagers. So I've got a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, so I've got my dad hat on as well as my principal.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Great. So I think all the information, I think it's going to be heavy on social media. What social media sites are you aware of? Instagram, Snapchat.
I think they don't, very few of them do Facebook, if at all. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
I know.
out,
I don't do
right?
that.
They don't do that.
Face what?
Facebook, exactly. That's, that's for grandmothers.
Well, gaming. I mean,
A lot of gaming. We'll talk about gaming.
Yeah, that's-
TikTok.
Yes, and that's new. That's come.
It's really, it's very
trending.
hot.
yeah. My son says he doesn't like it, but
You're what?
my son says he's not.
It's
interested,
kind of,
but,
it's funny. A lot of this stuff is sort of gender
Yeah.
specific, and TikTok is very.
Mhm.
It's really. It actually has the most daily users right now of all
One
social
that's
media
got
sites
more recently
worldwide.
is, Reddit.
Oh yeah, my daughter's huge
And
Reddit.
I was surprised with that one.
Mhm.
Oh. And I don't know what to make of that one. so we'll get
And
there.
you know, when we talk, I don't talk specifically about apps. Like I sort of I say that I try and give you information at 30,000 feet. If you start trying to parent at 10,000 feet or 5,000 feet on this, it's like a Ferrari will just go flying past you. You're like, okay, I figured out Instagram, I'm gonna talk to him about it. And then boom, he's on to something else. So we wanna talk more, and I think that's appropriate as a parent. You're trying to teach them. That's my other big goal, is that, our kids are here on the continuum, say, that middle school age with a couple high schoolers, a couple younger, but the bulk of kids we're talking about is sort of right here. And the goal is to get them here, which is graduating from high school, moving on to college. I will make the assumption that most all of your children will go on to a 4-year university. That's the hope. But I always say by the time they get to that point, they're we've sort of set them free as far as their technology goes. So if you think of that as a continuum, and they're over here, we are probably heavier right now on the monitoring, and as they move along, we try and lift some of that monitoring that we're using because we want to see how they do in that independence. We don't want to lock them down, and then send them to college to be in a dorm room at the cost of $50,000, $60,000 a year to see how they'll do. We want to have a pretty good understanding that they can self-regulate and self-protect. So from here to here, the goal, the overriding goal, is to get them to a point where they can self-regulate and self-protect. We do that through, I believe, educating them. We certainly monitor and watch what they do, but along that is just constant, that conversation and that education. And it comes in 2 places. It comes in the home, which is, I think, the #1 place. I always tell parents, we are the first responders. The school is not the first responders in this issue, and that today, I don't know if you experience that in general, but principals everywhere are parents are coming to them with devices saying, here's what's happening, what are you going to do about it? Well, what have you done at home? Nothing. You know, are there restrictions? Are there time limits? Where does the phone go at 9 o'clock at night? So it certainly is a partnership, but we as parents, we're parents. This is the deal. So that through monitoring, you're going to have conversation and you're going to educate them on that. I'm sure the school has different programming that they do to complement what we do at home. So let's kind of jump right in. I always start with, I tell a lot of stories. When I work with students, if I talk to them for an hour, they probably get 2, 3, 4 stories for a couple reasons. Number one is that the topics that we're talking about with them are essentially abstract in nature. So think about probably the most common thing we tell kids is what you put up you can't take down. And you may have said that to your kids. And when you think about it, that is very abstract because in their concrete mind, they think I can post something and I can delete it and it's gone. But there's a permanency to everything they do, and permanency is a very hard concept for them to grasp. So through the use of stories, it illustrates a concept that I'm trying to get across, and it gives it some concrete example. The other thing is it makes for an interesting presentation. So when I talk to students, 60% of my job is to entertain them. Not that I'm singing and dancing, but if I can get them engaged, I have like the first 5 minutes to draw them in. And they're not coming, like you came voluntarily. Kids don't come to an assembly voluntarily. They come like, some of them are happy they're out of math class or whatever it might be, but a lot of them are kind of come in like, oh, great, we get to listen to another speaker about internet safety, which I already know everything about it. So I have to sort of dazzle them in the first 5 minutes. And they find the stories really interesting. They find the stories very relatable. They are not scary. I don't do scare tactics. I was at a school yesterday in Oklahoma, and I talked to the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I joke a lot. I'm very relaxed and conversational with them, and we got caught up in a question. I looked at one of the kids and I said, wow, if I don't get moving, we're going to be here for like 2 hours. And 3 of the kids go, that's okay, because they enjoy it. And really, if I can break down that barrier, that I call it the arms folded barrier, they actually are incredibly interested in this because it's so fundamental to their life. So the first story I start with, this is my lovely daughter, Maeve. She would die if she knew that she had a picture in my presentation that's now being recorded, but that's okay. So she's now a sophomore, but when she was in 6th grade, and before I even tell you the story, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is your very, very standard, driven, type A young lady. top of the class, really aggressive course load, two-sport at the same time athlete, which leads itself to lots of stress and anxiety. But the one thing about her is that because of the fear of failure, that drive, she never wants to get in trouble. That's one of her big fears, and it's probably common among a lot of our kids. They don't want to get in trouble. It's a failure in a lot of ways. So having said that, if I were sitting in your seat when she was in 6th grade and someone said, do you think your kid would talk to someone they didn't know online? I'd say, well, it can happen to anybody. And then I'd probably lean over to my girlfriend and say, it would not happen to Maeve. Maeve would not do that. And the reality is that it can happen to any kid. This is not a good kid, bad kid situation. It's just kids being exposed to a lot online with the inability, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, with the inability to see and hear, no visual or auditory cues. And then you go back to the fact that they are very concrete in their thinking. So, having said that, she was on something called Google Hangouts. She was 11 years old, and she met someone who said her name was Iris, and Iris was also 11 years old. And Iris asked Maeve what she liked to do, and Maeve said, I play a lot of soccer. I play on a club team, I travel all over the Midwest with this team, I love it, it's my passion. And Iris says, me too, I play club soccer too. And she said to Maeve, where do you live? And Maeve said, I live in Illinois. And Iris said, OMG, same. And now Maeve is thinking, this is kind of cool. I met this girl. She seems nice. She's 11 years old. She plays soccer. She lives in Illinois. Maybe I have a new friend. So with that, Iris said, what club do you play for? And then Maeve says, I can't tell you that because my mom does like internet safety. Kind of puzzle over that. But I think it's a very good illustration of an 11-year-old knowing the rule, but not understanding the rule, which I think is important to recognize. She knew the rule, I can't give that information out, but she didn't really understand at a deeper level, at an abstract level, why she couldn't give that information out. It had nothing to do with what I do as a profession. So anyways, if you could read these texts, they were so typical of a 6th grader. It was like, no, I really want to tell you, and really was spelled like R-E-L-L-L-L-Y, and no was N-O-O-O-O-O, and they each would have all these sad face emojis at the end of, and Iris would say, I really want to know who you play for. And he's like, I know, but I just can't tell you. So Iris says, well, how about this? Let's play a game. I'm going to put up a picture of my soccer team, and you can guess which player I am, and then I get to guess what club you play for. And Maeve says, okay. So here comes a picture of the soccer team. Maeve says, is that you? She says, no. Do you play for Sockers? No. Is that you? No. Do you play for NSA? No. Is that you? No. Do you play for Synergy? No. And with that, my husband sees it sort of scrolling through his account. And he says, Maeve, get offline. And she was just in the office on the main floor of our house, not in a bedroom, not hiding away, but just on the desktop there. And her first response was, I didn't do anything wrong, like from another room. So I think that's also a very good example of the fact that kids come to this topic defensive. When we try and have conversation, if you go home tonight, you'll say like, hey, is your account private? And for some reason, this finger always comes out. And we don't really mean anything by it, but Mom, no, I don't even use that. No, of course it's private. They get very defensive. So one of our goals through the conversations, and one of my goals for you tonight is to be able to have a safe, non-threatening environment in which to talk about this, which is much easier said than done. So anyways, back to the story. The next day, Ron, my husband, hands me his phone and says, check out what your daughter was doing. And I always find it interesting that she becomes only my child in those moments. So I take it and I'm reading all the, what club do you play for, what division are you in, and I'm like, oh, she shouldn't have said that. Oh, she shouldn't have, I'm gonna need to talk to her about that. And then I can see exactly where she stopped communicating, because there's not another response from Maeve, and there's over 4 screens worth of messages from Iris. And they came sort of in batches. So the first couple, like right when she got off, was things like Maeve, question mark, question mark, question mark. And the next message was question mark, question mark. Where are you? Come back. Nothing. And then a couple hours would go by and the next batch of messages would come. And this one was a little bit more like, Maeve, I really want to talk to you. Please, I loved talking to you. You're like the best friend I've ever had. And then no response from Maeve, and a couple hours go by, and then the next batch comes. And this one says, Maeve, I'm a horrible person. You did guess which player I was and I lied. You're probably never going to forgive me and I would understand, but if you come back online, I'll show you my face. I'll show you which player I am. So the progression of messages got more giving. Like, I really want to pull you back in, and I'll give more of myself to get you back in this conversation.
How did they get connected on the phone?
They were on Google Hangouts.
Oh, okay.
So as I'm reading these 4 pages, I went from that feeling of, oh, she shouldn't have done that, to, oh, like, ooh, something like that. Even now when I tell you, I get sort of goosebumps. And so I work very closely with a police detective in high technology crime. And I screenshotted 2 pages of just the messages from Iris. And I sent him a text and I said, check this out. And he called me in 2 minutes. He said, is that Maeve? And I said, it is. And he said, go to the computer she was on. So I went into the office and he had me going like deep into the guts of that computer. And I was giving him information that I had no idea what it was. And he said, I'll call you back. And he called back about a half hour later. He said, I could not tell you this 100% unless I had a search warrant, but I'm about 90% sure she was talking to a 40-year-old man that we've been watching for months. And I tell this story to kids, and they're into it, because I do it a little bit like, so what division you think Iris is in? And they're like, A, everything Maeve says, Iris agrees with. And I'm thinking, okay, here I am, talking to them about internet safety. And I'm telling them this story, and they're right there with me. And then at the end when I say, he told me it was a 40-year-old man, the room goes, ah! And I look at him and I think it happens every time. Yesterday it happened out in Oklahoma. And I look at them and I'm like, why are you guys surprised? You were right with me the whole time. Didn't you see this coming? And they're like, well, no. And I think, if they can't recognize it, how can someone who's online experiencing it recognize it? So I always start with that story with the kids because it brings them in, it makes them interested. I tell it to you because we are that family that has ongoing conversation. I mean, this is what I do, as Maeve said, my mom does like internet safety. We talk about it, we monitor. I am up on every app, and yet it still happened to my daughter. So it can happen so easily and so quickly.
And the Google Hangouts group, what was it? Like, I've only used Google, I guess, Hangouts to get to their texting.
She was on it because, so interestingly enough, she was using that for school projects because she didn't have a phone.
Okay.
So that was her main mode of communication, which is an interesting dilemma, right? Because when they don't have data plans, they go to apps that allow them to communicate with each other. And some apps have decent privacy settings and protect them, and others sort of open them up to people connecting. Because they feel very defensive when we ask them, like, do you use TikTok? They just immediately feel like you're going to cut it down or make it bad or tell them they can't do it. So when you start with a story, it takes that conversation away from you and me, and it makes it about this other entity. And it can be somewhat interesting, and it's a little bit safer for them to explore someone else's problems than their own. So maybe they say, well, why did Maeve tell her that she lived in Illinois, but then didn't, like they can explore it more in a safer environment. One of the first conversations I feel like every parent should have with their child is, what happens if something goes wrong? And I have parents tell me, well, I don't want to expose my young child to some of the things that can go wrong. Like, are we opening up Pandora's box? But I'll challenge you to think of it in this way. How old were your kids? I'll ask you. I'll spread the wealth around asking my questions. How old were your children? You just have one. Her? Him. When you started talking to him about stranger danger?
Oh, probably forever. I mean, I don't know.
Like 2,
Yeah.
3, right? And you found age-appropriate language. So it's similar to that. And the way this goes is you're giving them a free pass. If something goes wrong, you can come to me. Because what happens is that, let me go back to the story of Maeve. When I said earlier, I said, she is so afraid of getting in trouble. And that is a huge deterrent to a lot of middle school kids, certainly, and high school kids, to actually coming to us. Because they define trouble very differently than I define trouble for my own child. I define trouble as Maeve continuing to talk unknowingly to a 40-year-old man, potentially giving up information, and then being asked to meet him face to face. And that's to me trouble. To her, trouble is my voice going up, her potentially getting grounded, maybe losing her rights to her phone or whatever it is. So even to this day as a sophomore, she can say something to me, and if I say, "You what?" her first reaction is, "Don't yell at me." And I think, and then I feel like my mother, right? "I'm not yelling." "Yes, you're still yelling." And then I want to say, "Do you want to know what yelling sounds like?" And then I'm like, wow, I've turned into my mother. So this golden ticket is helping them to see the path to a safe decision versus that path that in their eyes keeps them out of trouble. And for most kids, those are very different paths. And we have to sort of like lead them to see what that path of safety looks like. So the discussion goes something like, in my house it was Maeve, being on a computer, using all this technology I always love to reinforce, this is a privilege. Because some of them feel like this is a right, an inalienable right, that you as a parent cannot take away. And there's a lot of parents that need to be reminded that you have the power to take it away. So anyways, we talked about it. Hi, welcome. We just sort of got started. That this is a privilege, and with that privilege, I expect that you will do your best to stay safe, to follow the rules, to be appropriate. That's your side of the bargain. However, sometimes things go wrong. Kids make mistakes. Kids struggle to recognize situations. Kids get tricked. So, if you ever feel, and you get out your thesaurus, if you have a thesaurus, or you can go online, and think of every word that you can. If you ever feel scared, nervous, anxious, afraid, threatened, you can come to me. And I will not kill you. I won't yell. I won't take away your device. I won't ground you. I will keep you safe. I always tell them they have one pass. The reality is we would do this 1,000 times. But we do not want to set the idea that they can go do whatever they want and we'll bail them out because they got a deal. My side of the deal is that I will do everything I can to keep my voice right like this. And not react. Because think about it. When I say, like my example before was, I look at her, I said, "You did what?" It's not because I'm angry. It's because I'm having this emotional response. I just found out my kid's talking to a 40-year-old man online. I think most of our response is based in emotion. When I figured that out, I felt like I failed my child. Like, that's my one biggest job, is to keep this beautiful little girl safe. And I didn't do it. I put her in harm's way. I didn't directly, but I allowed that to happen. So every time, she has a golden ticket that she made back in 5th grade. She was very arts and crafts driven then. And it sits like right on her light on her desk. And every time I walk in her room and it catches my eye, it's a visual reminder for me that if anything ever goes wrong, I gotta stay calm and not react and talk her through this. Certainly, the free pass isn't a pass to do what you want. You don't get, there is conversation. There was conversation after we figured out what was going on. But it's a very different conversation than that conversation in the moment when emotions are running high. And then for her, it's a reminder that she can always come to me. And like everything, I believe this deeply, that if you get involved in those devices for your kids, it will open up conversation to lots of different things. So that free pass, I mean, that has parlayed itself into high school conversations of struggles that you can get into. And Maeve, you can come to me. I'm not saying it's always going to be easy, but you can come to me. So I think it's such an important place to start. When I talk to kids, I always start with street predators. And no matter where I am, I was in Oklahoma yesterday, I was in California 2 weeks ago, I'll be in New York in 2 weeks, I'm in Chicago quite often. It doesn't matter if I'm in a big city where kids are living in a very urban setting, or if I'm in, last year, probably the most remote place I've ever been was Basin, Wyoming, and I was at 2 separate schools that were over 50 miles apart. Where the buffalo, like when I drove home at night in the dark to my hotel, the superintendent said, be very careful of some kind of elk, because they come out at night. I'm like, okay, it's not a problem I have in Chicago, but anyways. But they all know this, and that's why I start with street predators. It's such a grounding place because they know how to be safe outside. Because you started talking to your child at 2 or 3 years old. When I put, no matter where I am, I put this slide up and the room sort of snickers. And they elbow and they giggle and they laugh. And it's because all of these things, these lures, are cliche to them. They're like, oh yeah, the white van. And the guy with the dog. The other thing I do with the kids, would you be my 5th grader, my 6th grader? Okay, stand up. I know, I'm gonna make you get up and move. Come stand right here. What's your first name? What's your first, no, for real. I'm not like a predator. This is a test. No, I'm not gonna get this wrong. You're being filmed, you know. I know. Every parent in the school is gonna see me get this wrong.
Yes. Marie.
Marie.
Yes.
So, Marie, if I were to tell you right now, and don't overthink this.
Okay.
Sometimes the parents overthink it more than the kids. The kids have the right answers like really quickly. If I were to tell you right now that I'm an 80-year-old man, would you believe me?
No.
Why not?
Because you don't look like it.
Exactly. I mean, you said it, thank God. You're making me nervous. You're like, because you don't look like an 80-year-old man. She used her eyes to answer that question. She even gave the answer in the verb of what her eyes do. Probably also my voice, what you hear,
True.
helps you answer that question. Now, let's start over. You've never met me, you don't know me, you're blindfolded, you can't see me, and your ears are covered, you can't hear me. And I somehow communicate to you that I'm an 80-year-old man. Do you have any reason not to believe me? Do you have any reason not to believe me? Yeah, as a 5th grader.
Well, yeah, as a 5th grader, no.
No. So, and that's what the kids say. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks, you sit down. That's what the kids say quickly. They'll just go. And the first couple times I did this years ago, I was nervous. Like, you're bringing up a kid in front of 300 other kids to prove a point. I hope they give me the right answer. And they do every single time, and they're quick, because you don't look like it. Do you have any reason not to believe me? Nope. Because what I want them to realize is that they can't see and they can't hear. When they're outside on the street, number one is you have told them, we've all done, collectively as a society everywhere in the United States, a great job of teaching our kids what it looks like. We tell them the rule. Don't talk to people you don't know. Don't go with someone you don't know. But then we tell them what it looks like. And that's why they laugh at this slide. We tell them about the van. We tell them about the guy with the dog. We tell them about candy. Whatever other scenarios you make up, we tell them. So we tell them the rule, we tell them what it looks like. The other thing we're really good at is we physically ensure their safety, because kids are safer if they are with someone than if they're alone. And again, no matter where I am in the United States, that's what kids will tell me. You are less vulnerable if you're with a group of people. Because a predator is typically looking for a vulnerable kid. And outside, that represents itself on someone who's alone. And even to this day, when I talk to my 2 adult male sons at college on a Saturday afternoon, Cam is 21 years old, and I'll say, what are you doing tonight? I'm going to a party. I'm walking. Okay, when you leave that party, can you please make sure you walk with someone? Yeah, of course, Mom. I mean, even a young man tells me, yeah, of course. So, we walk with them when they're little, a caregiver walks with them to the park. When they get a little bit older, maybe they're starting to go to Starbucks with a friend or with a group. When they're in high school, they hang out in groups. So then all of a sudden, they get to some age, which I will not tell you what that age is. That's something for you to decide. We decide, we being our family, that we are going to give them a phone. And we are going to stop the constant nagging of when am I going to get a phone? Can I get a phone? I'm the only kid in my whole grade who doesn't have a phone. I'm totally out of all the social plans because I don't have, the reasons go on. And we take this beautiful, expensive device and we wrap it up and we say, happy birthday. You can now talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere in the whole world. Good luck. And if you need more data, let me know. Seems a little cavalier, like maybe you're not quite that cavalier, but if you honestly think about how much effort you have put into educating them about how to be safe outside, and ask yourself, have I put in even half of that effort in educating them how to be safe on a device where they can no longer use their eyes and their ears at all to navigate? The answer is pretty clear. Even kids will tell me, no, I just kind of got my phone and off I went. So when we go online, number one is we have to start doing a better job of telling them the stories. That's exactly what happened to Maeve. She knew the rules, but she had no idea what it looked like, how to recognize it. I think of their brain as a database. All of our brains are a database, and I have 51 years worth of experiences in that database. So when something happens to me, I kind of rifle through that database and I say, has it happened before? How did I handle it? Was it successful? What did I do wrong? What can I do better? And that's what we call learning. For our kids, especially with technology, that database is like empty. So through presentations like mine, through conversations at home, we've got to build that database through stories so that they can start to recognize it in the same way that you did about how to be safe outside. The other thing we agreed on was that they are safer if they're with someone. They're less vulnerable. So how do we reduce that vulnerability online for them? And I give you 2 suggestions that you can go home today and implement. Number one is when they create those usernames, whether it's a social media site, a gaming site, wherever they are connecting with people via a username, do not let them use their first and their last name. It makes them totally identifiable online, and I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. The second thing is to make sure that they are on sites that have privacy settings and make sure those accounts are set to private. Yesterday when I was with the kids in Oklahoma, I mean, when I say that, the kids are so transparent. So they're all sitting there and I'll say something, and I know just in my presentation when to watch them. And when I said, make sure your accounts are set to private, there's always in a group of 30 kids, like 6 or 8 kids who are looking at each other going, because their accounts are public. And the struggle is that, especially in middle school, when we say make your username not your first and your last, and make your account private, we are like swimming upstream because they want to do the exact opposite. They want to be found and build numbers. They want followers and likes, and that's what drives them. And we're saying, no, we want you to be a little bit more anonymous. So the reason why this is important, my example, is that I'll use my son Ian. A year ago this time, he was 17 years old, he was a senior in high school, and if you were to Google him, just Google Ian Repking, you could find out in a matter of 30 seconds that Ian Repking was 17 years old, a senior in high school, went to Glenbard West, lived in Glen Ellen, and ran track and cross country. You can also find out that he ran in the York Invite last week and ran a time of 15:15 on a 3-mile course. So, someone finds that out in 30 seconds, goes over to Instagram, does a search on Ian Repking. Ian_Repking, doesn't matter, gets maybe 10 returns. Looks at the first one. It's a public account, which means I can see into all the pictures, all the content. Look at the pictures. It looks like a man with some kids. There's a man and a woman. There's a bunch of little kids. Probably not Ian Repking that I'm looking for. Go to the next account. The account's private. Can I see it? Nope. It's as if that person is walking with 3 other people down the street. Not going to spend my time there. Goes to the third account, Ian Repking, public account. Goes inside, looks at the pictures. There's a picture of a teenage boy with a girl at a dance. There's a picture of a dog. There's a picture of a boy with a dog. There's a picture of the boy with 5 other boys with their arms around each other at a cross-country meet, and every one of their shirts says Glenbard West. I just made the connection, so I send the message. Hey Ian, saw you running at the York Invite this week. You were awesome. Let's connect. I'll ask a high school group, would you take that? And everyone in the room says, yep. I'd connect. So there's that connection. So the reality is as our kids get a little bit older, there's a lot of information that exists about them online that's very hard for us to control. In fact, we can't. But what we want to do is break that ability to connect with them in the places that they're hanging out socially. Gaming sites, social media sites. So if they don't have, certainly if his account was private, then they couldn't see into the pictures. So if you have a child, I think you said she has a high schooler, someone had a high schooler, and you're like, yeah, there's no way they're changing their username. That ship is so far out of the harbor. If you can at least get them to make the account private, you're one step closer. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about social media. These are the 3 main ideas I really work hard in an hour presentation to get across to the kids. Number 1, what goes up stays up. And I tell the kids right away, like, I hope you all are rolling your eyes at me right now. Like, oh my gosh, if one more person tells me I can't take it down or it's permanent, I've heard it all. But I think a lot of times, I call it the Charlie Brown teacher syndrome. Wah, 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 wah. And they look up and they go, yes ma'am. And they're not trying to be disrespectful. They're not trying to blow you off. They just actually don't know what they don't know until they know it. So they go, yeah, I know. Yeah, I got it. I don't talk to anyone I don't know online, Mom. And then they talk to people they don't know. So I have different stories depending on their age for this, but it helps them to see how something that they post can have permanency even when someone takes it down. With the younger kids, I'll often tell them that if I could work in their classroom, one of the things we would do is I would give them all a sheet of white paper, and I'd give them a Sharpie. What's unique about a Sharpie?
It's permanent.
It's permanent. And they give me the words, like there's certain words that I'm looking for them to say. Permanent is that word. It's permanent. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're all going to put our foot on our sheet of paper, and we're going to outline our foot with that Sharpie. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write things that describe us in that footprint. So we're making this footprint of ourselves. And they're like, oh, okay, so this is good for like 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade. And they get to work. And I let them all sort of get partway into it, so they've all written with that Sharpie, and I say, wait, I forgot to tell you guys something. And they look up at me and I tell them, we're gonna take these footprints, and whatever building I'm in, I find like whatever the most common room is, the lunchroom, the auditorium, we're gonna take these footprints and we're gonna put them all around the lunchroom for everyone in the school to see, and every parent that comes, and every visitor, and every teacher to see, okay? And every single time I do it, there's someone that comes up to me. They are really predictable and consistent. Mrs. Repking, could I get another sheet of paper? oh my gosh, Michael, I brought 1 sheet per student. What's wrong? Well, I put something on there. It's nothing bad. But now that you're saying that, like the 8th graders and the 7th graders are gonna see it, I don't want it up there. So think about, put this in terms of online. We changed the audience, right? That we changed the visibility of the post. So I said, well, and I'm like, can we talk to the class about it? Yeah. Okay, so guys, Michael put something on a sheet. Michael, what'd you put? And this was a kid in New York, and he was sort of like that athletic, popular looking young man that all the kids liked, and he's like, that I really like Pokemon. It was so cute. But I could see his problem. When he thought it was just us in the class, the people he knew and he was comfortable with, and they knew who he was, and he was comfortable in his relationships and confident, he didn't have a problem exposing that part of him. But when it went to a broader audience, he felt like he was vulnerable, that he might get made fun of by the 8th graders. So I said to the class, what can we do? And I don't know, 6th graders have all the answers. They have lots of answers. And they raised their hand, they said, you can scratch it out. I said, okay. And I took the piece of paper and I scratched it out. And then I held it up to the light. And I'm like, oh, I can still see it. Any other idea? Yep. You can use whiteout. So I went to my bag. I always use my own whiteout that's highly watered down. And I whited it out. And the Sharpie, they're like, oh, Sharpie comes right through. Yeah, Sharpie's hard to white out. What else can I do? Turn it over. So I turned it over, we retraced it, we did it again, I held it up to the light, and you could see Pokemon backwards on the other side. So what I wanted to illustrate to them is that the paper is the internet, and you are the Sharpie. And everything you put online, you can't take it away all the way. Yes, you can scratch it out. You can white it out. You can make it more difficult to see, but it still is there. Maybe if you send me a Snapchat and I look at it and I don't replay it and I don't take a screenshot of it and it disappears, I probably can't go find that picture again. But that picture still exists. And someone can dive into the servers of Snapchat and pull it out. More typically, and you see it all the time, you see it, the place I see it the most is with professional athletes. When something resurfaces from their high school days, a tweet that they sent that had derogatory terms or racial language in it. And now all of a sudden it's put out there and their moral character is brought into question and they're trying to defend themselves and it ultimately costs them money. And I tell the kids all the time, I can guarantee you that quarterback that now plays for the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, when he was going through the draft process and he was looking at a contract for $40 million, I am 100% sure that his agent had social media experts scrubbing his social media sites. Yet someone pulled up 4 tweets from when he was a sophomore in high school. That's a great story. The draft of 2018, 4 quarterbacks up vying for the #1 position. Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Sam Rosen, Sam Darnell, and Josh. I'm getting these names. It doesn't matter. But after lots of analysis, the Cleveland Browns were going to pick Josh Allen out of the University of Wyoming. We're talking months of analysis because the Browns are going to pay $40 million for him. And the day before the draft, someone unearthed 4 tweets that he sent when he was a sophomore in high school, 6-7 years previous. Someone pulled out these tweets. They had homophobic language, racial slurs, and sexual content. And that day before the draft, he is sitting on ESPN being asked, what do you mean by this? Are you homophobic? Are you a racist? He's like, no, go talk to every player on the Wyoming team. I was the leader. They loved me. I'm a great guy. And I actually was in a 7th grade class in New York when this happened, and I came into class and I said, guys, guess what happened? What do you think? And at first the conversation was really being participated in by the boys, but pretty soon all the kids were. And I said, do you think the Cleveland Browns should draft him? And one boy raised his hand, he's like, absolutely, the Cleveland Browns are the worst team in football and they totally need a quarterback. And this is about football. This isn't about what he tweeted, which was, I couldn't have paid him. I couldn't have scripted him to say it better. And I said, well, okay, I got that. But if I'm the owner of the Browns, and I'm going to pay this guy $40 million to take my team out of the toilet and potentially earn me more revenue and, you know, ticket sales, TV revenues, merchandise, all this stuff, I agree that he's the best quarterback. However, I have a wide receiver who's African American. And he doesn't believe anything he says. He's very offended by those tweets he sent. I have a lineman who's homosexual, doesn't want to be anywhere near this guy. So I'm going to pay this guy $40 million and take the chance that someone may not believe him. Because his explanation at the end of the day was he was young and dumb. That was what he said on ESPN. He's like, I'm not ready. Why'd you send those tweets? I was young and dumb. And I think that's probably the most accurate explanation. But what I want the kids to see is that what you put up online is read by people who have no context, and they're left to make all of their own judgments. And what happened, that the kids came in Friday morning, the draft was Thursday night, I had a girl come right up to me, Coke bottle glasses. I don't think she's watched an NFL game in her entire life. And she said, Josh Allen went number 7 to the Buffalo Bills. And I looked, I go, did you watch the draft? And the only person I know who watches the draft is my husband. And it's usually to see who the Bears drafted. And she's like, yeah, I watched it with my dad. Did he ask you why you were watching the draft? And she's like, yeah, I told him all about Josh Allen's tweets. Oh, what a great conversation to have in your house. So stories like that are impactful to them. And they're great examples of permanency, longevity. Doesn't matter if it was taken off the site or not, someone can get to it. So what I want them to do is to pause before they post. And that's a lot to ask a middle schooler or a high schooler. Pause, like what? That's open space in their brain, which can be dangerous. So I tell them, have a question in your head. What would happen if my mom saw this? Unfortunately, I don't get a whole lot of response. Yesterday, when I said, what would happen if your grandma saw it? 10 kids went like this. Wow. Like, that's what I want that. And I'm not just talking social media posts. I'm talking comments on a gaming site. Comments in group chats. Group chats get really popular in middle school. And with the absence of visual cues and auditory cues, kids tend to say more insensitive things. And if they paused and thought a little bit, anything they can think, what would happen if my grandma saw this? Kids, all the time they go, oh yeah, my grandma saw what I said on the gaming site. Then don't do it. So that's what goes up stays up. The other thing I talk about here with them is that there is no such thing as privacy online. That's a really important concept because they think if you and I are texting, you're my best friend, and I'll say, Maeve, let me see your phone. No, it's private. I'm not doing anything wrong, Mom. I'm just talking with Leah, and it's a private conversation. And it's like she throws a match on my gasoline. Because I'm like, Maeve, there's no such thing as privacy. The minute you decide to type into that device, you have said, I'm okay with the whole world seeing this. The minute you post something, the minute you send a picture, the minute you make a comment, there is the potential that the whole world could see it, or your whole class could see it, or the whole school could see it. All someone has to do is take a screenshot and share it out. I think there's also an important message. It's a great opportunity to talk about communication, because one skill that our kids are sorely lacking as a generation is the ability to really communicate face-to-face. I see it with my own kids, they struggle to approach teachers, to approach coaches, to approach bosses, because they haven't done it. They don't even, like, I think about how many times I had to answer a telephone in my house. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. That phone rang constantly, and I always wanted to answer. It was never for me, but, you know, I always had to answer it, and I had to interact with someone, and most of the time an adult. You know, Kelleher Residence, this is Liz speaking. no, my mom's not here. Can I take a message? Okay. Yeah, she should be home at 9. Okay, I'd be happy to give her the message. Our kids don't know how to do that. I call my own kids, they're like, yeah, bye. And I have pretty good, I mean, my kids talk a lot. We do a lot of talking, as you can imagine. So I tell them all the time, like, the other reason you need to be careful is that if you have something personal, you're not doing anything bad, that you need to talk to someone about, do it face to face. For many reasons. One is they want to text coaches, they want to text teachers. And I really believe they need to start approaching adults, certainly, and talking to them because they really lack the confidence, generally speaking, to approach adults. I think within their own relationships, there is so much, I call it digital drama. You could escalate it to cyberbullying, but I think digital drama is more encompassing of many kids because they don't take, when the drama starts ramping up, I tell them, get it offline. Talk to someone face to face because there's so much more communication that happens face to face and online, and they're not getting that. So I give them very simple examples. Like I could come up to you and say, your dress. Or I could come up to her and say, your dress. Okay, do you have two very distinct feelings from that? I mean, the first one is very clear, I like your dress. The second one, I'm kind of like, I can't believe you wore that dress today. But the words, I only used 2 words, and they were exactly the same. But they communicated 2 entirely different messages. So you don't have the ability to communicate facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and I used all of that in those messages. So kids will say, because they have most of the answers, I use emojis for that. And I find the best, my most effective approach with them is never disagree with them. It's to agree and then refute. So I'll say, I get it. You use it, so like I could have said your dress with like big eyes and a big smile, or I could say your dress with like the laughy tears going down the face emoji to indicate I'm just joking. It's probably the most overused emoji ever. And so what that does is it communicates my tone to her. It communicates it very poorly, but in their eyes it communicates. What's missing is that I don't see her response. So maybe when I said, your dress, how did you react? Oh no, actually that's not what I meant. I meant, I have the same one at home and I was just surprised that you have that one. So when I saw her reaction, I had the opportunity to amend my message. When I use an emoji, sure, I give her my emotion, poorly, but I don't ever see how she reacts. So maybe I put that laughy, smiley emoji on it, but I don't know that in her bedroom, she's crying right now because her feelings are hurt. So there's a really good opportunity. I talk about your reputation, what people think of you, and then I throw the word online in front of it. This is your online reputation. And your online reputation is made up of the pictures you post, the comments you make, the language you use. And I draw a distinction between the language you use and the comments you make. Because kids get to a certain point developmentally where they think it's really fun to swear and kind of cool. And I want them to see that all of these things tell a story about us. So I could say you played a great game Friday. Or I could say you played a blankety blank good game Friday. And the blankety blanks were cuss words. Did I say something nice?
Yeah.
When I said you played a blankety blank and I swore, did I say something nice?
I think a kid would say, yeah, you're telling me I did a great job.
Well, what they do, I'll say, here's what happens with the kids. I'll say, you played a great game, and did I say something nice? And they go, yeah. Okay, you played a blankety blank good game, and the blankety blanks are swear words. And they go, I'll say, did I say something nice? And they go, no. Wait, yes. Well, I don't know. And that's, if I can get them thinking, then I'm there. So I'll tell them what I said was nice, the language I used was inappropriate. Both tell a story about me. So I want them to start to see that everything they're doing online is creating a story about who they are. A couple things they need to be reminded of is that there's no context online. So if the three of us are hanging out and we're good buddies, and we are, maybe it's my daughter Maeve, a sophomore in high school, and she's with her 3 girlfriends, and they take a picture with 10 solo cups in front of Maeve, 10 red solo cups, and you're a college admissions officer, or you're a college golf coach, she plays golf or soccer, and you take a look at Maeve's Instagram post, what conclusion are you going to draw?
Well,
10
that
red
would-
solo cups in front
that
of her.
would suggest that she just finished like 10 beers. or
Yeah,
something.
that she's drinking as a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
But maybe they had lemonade in all of these. So I tell the kids, no one's gonna call you up on the phone and say, hey, I saw that picture of you with the red solo cups. What was in those? There's just assumptions. So there's no context. And when they think about their social media, they think about their private accounts and that these are their friends. And there's jokes and there's language. And what I want them to see is that there's a much broader audience. Well, Mrs. Repkin, you just told me that I need to make my account private. Okay, so I'll say to a class, who's going to play football in college? I was in Oklahoma. It's a big football state, of course. And they all go, him. And the kid stands up. He was like in 8th grade, and I was just like, wow, you're a big boy. And I said, where do you want to play? And he goes, OU. I said, so you're an 8th grader, right? Yep. Did you play basketball? Yeah. Where do you want to play basketball? Duke. Okay, so let's talk about that. What if I told you that your 8th grader, end of freshman year, Coach K, the coach of Duke, is going to start following you on social media? He was like, I go, does it change? He goes, yeah, it changes what I'm going to do. So your question then, in your mind, is going to be, what would happen if Coach K sees this? Because I can guarantee you, I can absolutely positively guarantee you that any coach, football or basketball or any other sport, that wants to ask you to come to play at their university is going to follow you on social media. Well, Mrs. Repking, my account's private. My username's not my first and my last. They're going to ask you, because they asked my son, Ian, who's a runner, the Notre Dame coach, sent him an email. Saw you run at Nike Nationals. You were great. Can't wait to see you out on the track. I'm excited to see your time in the mile. Please email me that time. And what's your username to Instagram? They're just going to ask you. Every form you fill out, they're going to ask you. 40% of admissions officers for colleges are looking at social media. They want to see, is there consistency between what they're telling me in their applications and their essays? Is it consistent? Am I seeing the real them? I tell them, look, I'm not telling you to write a fake story, because then you're not going to match. You want to have an accurate, authentic story, but you want to be appropriate. You want to make sure you're not putting inappropriate things online. You want to make sure that that story reflects the online reputation you want out there, because this is your future. So there's tons I can talk about with them with that.
Have you come across any schools where perhaps they make it mandatory that the students have to allow the principal to follow them, or a teacher, like some school official?
I haven't. I will tell you that I do a lot of high school programming, and I have 8 different presentations, and one of them that I do for the juniors is how to, because it's not all bad. You know, when I say the admissions officers are looking at it, coaches are looking at it, employers are looking at it, my guess is you don't hire a teacher without doing some sort of look-see into who they are. It's just the reality of the world we live in. The tools are there. It's another way to evaluate, is this the real them that I'm seeing? But I also tell kids, like, because they're looking, this is a place that you can differentiate yourself. My son, last year, he got a 34 on the ACT, which is 2 points away from perfect. He had, on a 4.0 scale, he had a 4.5 from all his honors and AP classes. He was a 4-year varsity athlete in 2 sports and the captain of the team. He was this thing called a super senior mentor. He got a humanitarian award from the district. He was a great student, a good kid. He applied to 11 schools, 6 of which fell into the category of super selective. It was Notre Dame, Michigan, UVA, University of North Carolina, Northwestern, and Villanova. And of those 6 schools, he didn't get into a single one. And when you looked at the little, it's called Naviance, which is like the tool that the high schools use, and you can put your grades and your stuff in there, and it'll show you like where you would fall. And every single school, he fell right in the middle of the accepted category. He didn't get into one. And I think that what I'm trying to illustrate is that the terrain that our kids are growing up in, and I think the next most, well, especially for your kids that move on to high school, they have a competitive environment there, but their environment to go to college is incredibly competitive, and they need to find ways to differentiate themselves. Ian did all the great things you do in high school, but he didn't do anything really beyond that, which was it was his choice, and he's at University of Illinois, and it's great. But if your child has this dream of going to an Ivy League or a top-notch school, you have to do things to differentiate yourself, and they can use social media to do that. They can create, if you have a kid that's into like art or photography, something where they have some sort of portfolio, or they've done a series of engineering projects through their high school career, I would tell them, create a personal website. And then in all of your applications, point back to that website. I have lots of quotes from admissions officers where they'll say, yes, I went and looked at her social media, and I found out that she started a I get all the letters, LG, blah, 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 Q movement that she hadn't mentioned in her application. And that really impressed me. And that was the type, I want someone who's a leader like that on our campus. So it's a place where you can highlight other things that you've done, and it's a way to differentiate and brand yourself as well. So I don't want to always be like, don't do this, don't do that, it's going to wreck you, there's consequences. The other message I feel is really, really important to temper with all these warnings is to let them know if something goes wrong, if they make a mistake, every single mistake is recoverable. We spend so much time warning them, and we forget that their brains are not fully developed, and they run into a problem, and they make a big mistake, and they don't know what to do. And there are kids that have ended their lives because they didn't know what to do. And I don't ever want a kid to feel like there's no way out. So I tell my kids, I tell kids I talk to all the time, like, look, there are consequences to this stuff, and sometimes the consequences are really painful, and they can change the path that you're on, but we can always recover from it, no matter what. There's always a solution. So let's move on. A couple social media points to, I don't talk to the kids about this, but for your information, there are age requirements to all of the sites. And the age requirements are there for a reason. So Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok are 12 plus. The way you find this is by going into the App Store or Google Play, and it has it right there for you. What the app is saying is that whatever the age limit is, they're saying we are not set up for users younger than this. And TikTok is probably the biggest problem right now because there's a lot of content in there that's inappropriate. So if you have an 11-year-old on it, can they search out and find really disgusting sexual-oriented videos? Yes, they absolutely can. It is populated by the public, so TikTok doesn't keep up with that. The other thing to realize is that there is a law, COPPA, Child Online Privacy and Protection Act, that says, it was created years ago to protect kids online, and one component of it says that you cannot collect data on someone who's under the age of 13 without written consent from their parents. So what does that really mean? Well, let's say you decide tonight that you want to buy a new pair of shoes. Who wants to go out shopping? So you go online, you go to Zappos, and you find a cute little pair of fall boots, and you buy them. And since you're online, you flip over to Facebook, because you're online, and what is the first thing in your feed? Is an ad for your shoes. For not only from Zappos, but for the shoes you just purchased. So there is this instantaneous feed between what you're doing online and how to market at you. It used to be really heavily just Facebook, and then I started moving over to Instagram because I was tired of all the targeted ads as well as all the targeted articles that come at you. And I really just want to see my friends and their kids and their vacations. And so I moved more over to Instagram. And now, slowly, do I have any Instagram users? There's more ads. It's coming, right? Where it's just going to be polluted with the ads. And they're always perfectly targeted at you and what your interests are.
I'm suspecting they're coming from WhatsApp as well then. WhatsApp conversations seem to appear in adverts.
Oh, really? I don't use WhatsApp too much.
Yeah, WhatsApp's hooked in with Facebook
Mm.
and Instagram, all the same company, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the data privacy issues is a whole other bottle of wine to go through, but I mean, your data is constantly being collected, and it's not just being collected from the social media sites, it's being collected from the actual devices, from your browsers. So anyways, privacy settings we've talked about. I wish we could come up for another word, because I spend so much time telling kids to make your account private, and then I'd spend a lot of time telling them there's no privacy online. So there's sort of like a conflict in the terminology there. The other big word that I hate is disappear. It's associated with Snapchat. Well, it disappears. It's a disappearing app, and nothing disappears. Usernames we've talked about, and then analytics is a really interesting topic, and I don't know if you've thought about it much, but analytics are all those numbers associated with sites. Followers, likes, streaks, scores, and they're objective measurable numbers that kids are using to derive their value. How important am I? How many friends do I have? How many likes did I get for that picture? How quickly did I get those likes? You know, I put a picture up, and in 10 minutes, I did not get 100 likes. So I better take that picture down. What is my value in this relationship is what they pull out of streaks. Do you know what a streak is? Can I explain a streak to you in Snapchat? So if Nicole and I are Snapchat friends, and I snap her today and she snaps me back, we both snapped each other within a 24-hour period. That's one. Then tomorrow on Friday, you snap me and I snap you back in 24 hours. That's two.
What do you mean by snap you?
I take a picture and I send it to her.
Okay.
Kind of the premise of Snapchat.
Okay.
We do it again on Saturday. We are now have done it 3 consecutive days, right? We are now Snapchat Streak official, and next to Nicole's name on my list of friends, there's a 3. And every day that we do this in consecutive days, that counter goes up. 3, 4, 5, 272, 487, and we have a streak. And you know what that streak tells you all? We are best friends. When we have a streak, we have Snapchatted each other 372 days. It's a lot of days. Kids, middle schoolers, have 10, 15 streaks, 20 streaks going that are in the triple digits. Do you know how much time that is they spend? And I actually interviewed a senior in high school, because I love to, sometimes I do interviews for articles with seniors, because they're not out of it, but they've had some growth and maturity in it. And I'll ask, what do you think of streaks? And they're like, it's kind of dumb. Like, people take a picture of the carpet and send, like, I don't want to take a picture of me. I look like, I look like garbage. So I take a picture of the floor and I send it to you. Like, how is that representative of us communicating as friends? Other people will say, the other flip side of that was, it does increase my connection and communication with some of my friends. So obviously there's 2 sides to it. But what I want you to realize is that all these analytics that are created by the platform are driving revenue. So our kids are allowing the analytics to drive their, for lack of a better word, their value in this world, their friendships, their self-esteem, their self-worth. But the platforms created it to drive money. Their money is driven in a very simplistic equation by the number of users times the amount of time the user is on the site equals revenue. So the best example I can give you about these streaks is that if you went on my phone, you would find I have about 5 Snapchat friends, 4 of which are that she wants to connect on. So I actually don't think I've ever gotten past 20 days with her, and it's like, it's a lot of work. And that's one person that I streak with. But when I'm streaking with Maeve, every day she sends me a snap and I get out my phone and I take a picture and I send it to her. And then sometimes, like if Maeve and I get close to that 24-hour window and I haven't replied to her snap and our streak may disappear, a little hourglass appears next to her name to let me know that our streak may disappear. And then I typically will get a text from my daughter that says, Mom, streak. Oh my gosh, okay. And I send it to her. So what happens is that Snapchat made me an active daily user. I was not an active daily user. And if you like Google stats, like what's the most popular apps, how many users does Snapchat have, you will see numbers like they have 3 million daily users. Because if you have 3 million daily users, guess what? People are going to want to run ads on your site. So all of that is driving revenue. When I work with 8th graders, high schoolers, we have a whole section on social media mindfulness and intentional use. I want them to start to understand what is happening. That a lot of this stuff is built on a variable reward system, which is addicting. And if they can just, I believe if we can educate them as to what's going on behind the scenes, they can pick and choose what parts of it they want to use in intentional ways. Another great example is Netflix and YouTube. Anyone watch Netflix? Are you a Netflix watcher? Are you watching anything now? You watching a series?
My husband's watching Fastest Cars right now.
Okay, so, well, I'll use myself as an example. I am watching, let's see, I'm watching lots of things, but say I'm watching Friends. And I come home tonight and I get ready for bed and I think, you know what, I'm not going to read tonight. By the way, all this technology has really reduced my amount of time reading at night. I don't know if you guys feel that way. But I'm going to watch one episode of Friends just to sort of unwind and decompress a little bit. So I get in bed with my iPad and I cue it up and I watch one episode of Friends and I'm laying there. And guess what? As soon as it doesn't even end. It's before the credits even roll. The little square in the corner appears with, you have 5 seconds to decide, right? It's like a bomb.
You can't even find the remote fast enough to like stop. I don't want the next one to start. I'm saving that one.
Get under the covers, right? So what happens is that it just automatically plays. And I watch 3 episodes. When I said, I just want to watch one episode, I really want to get to sleep by 10 tonight. Got an early morning tomorrow. And all of a sudden it's 11 o'clock. And I'm still watching Friends. And I think what they've done, they do the same thing with YouTube. Your kid comes to you, your little kid says, can I watch can I watch a video about ponies? Sure, honey. And you go cue it up for them. It's 10 minutes. You think, great, I can go start making dinner because this is all quiet. And I go and I start making dinner. And they're still quiet after like 30 minutes because the next one just kept coming and they just watch. So what has happened is that they've sort of switched our decision-making process. Instead of deciding to watch, because years ago, like a year or 2 years ago, when you would watch something like that, the episode would finish and it would come back out to the menu of all the episodes and you'd have to pick one. And it was much easier to go, yeah, I'm done, I'm going to bed. Now it just starts right up. So what they've done is they've said, no decision is a positive for them. You have to make a move to get off instead of making a move to stay. So they've switched that and it's worked to their advantage. What the CEO of Netflix was interviewed and asked, what is your greatest competitor? What do you think Netflix's greatest competitor is?
Dinner time?
Not dinner time.
Bedtime?
Sleep. Sleep. He said my greatest competitor is sleep. So that when you hear that, and then I think about my use, this is what I'm trying to get the kids to hear because even for me as an adult, when I hear that, I go, wait a minute. I'm totally being manipulated by this, and I'm falling right into it. And I need to be more intentional about, I'm not going to stop watching Netflix, but I'm gonna be mindful of whether I wanna watch that second episode. And that's where I want kids to start getting. I want all of us to start getting more knowledgeable and mindful of how we're using it. Okay, we're almost there. Gaming, this is what you came for. You have to listen to all that other stuff to get to gaming. This is actually the varsity gaming team for Robert Morris University. And when I say varsity, this means they are part of the athletic department. Many of those kids are on athletic scholarships.
For gaming.
For gaming. This facility that they're in was built from athletic money for gaming. Their clothes are, their uniforms, they have a travel budget, and there's, I don't know how many now, but at the time, a couple years ago when I learned about this, there were like 4 varsity NCAA teams. And it's probably the one thing in the IHSA, the high school athletics, that is in the greatest demand, is to make an EA Sports gaming league or state championship type thing. So it's like a $70 billion industry, the gaming industry. So, you know, where there's money, there are people trying to capitalize on that. And they say that, the guy, I heard him in a TED Talk, the guy who's in charge of the Robert Morris team, and he said that in 5 to 10 years, it'll be a bigger moneymaker than the BCS playoff games in football.
How do they monetize it? People are going to come and watch them game?
Mm-hmm. So they have, right now, they have World Championships. They had it at the Staples Center in Los Angeles 3 years ago. It sold out in 90 minutes. They had one in Europe in one of those big, huge soccer stadiums. Totally sold out. Yeah, I know. I don't get it. I have no idea.
I get it because I watch my kid do it. Like I'll watch. My daughter used to be into. She would be on YouTube watching a kid play.
Oh yeah.
Minecraft.
Sure.
And then I got to the point. I'm like, Joe, I'd rather have you play Minecraft.
I know, but
like,
they want to learn
like
that
you're
way.
faced with two evils, like, and they don't really show them anything. They're just going about the game and being all dramatic about it, like, oh my gosh, there's a zombie. They can't even hurt you in the whatever the building mode or whatever it is. But no,
yeah, they come in the stadiums and they have teams and all of their board, they're all projected onto the big screens. I mean, I watch my kids play. I can't figure out what they're doing even when they're just playing FIFA. Like I couldn't imagine
if you
going
look
to
at
watch
this, it's easy to understand why this would become a phenomenon bigger than basketball or football, because I can't play professional basketball. I can't even be very good at it, but I can be good at gaming.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is driving these kids to watch other kids game, because they could simply hit pause and then like play the game even if they stink.
Yeah.
Where I can't go out there with a bunch of huge guys and play tackle football. There's not even guys outside playing tackle football.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like the gaming is right there. It's like, oh, I just so it would be huge. But these kids get sucked in. Probably the craziest thing is like just like the Netflix that where they've now prompted it requires action to disengage. And there's plenty of studies to show that we as a people would rather do nothing and have something happen, good or bad, as opposed to doing something and having something happen good or bad. And there's all kind of context in accident prevention. But like years ago, I would watch her get sucked into games, and I was an app developer a long time ago, and I almost started laughing when I saw it. They'll make the kid watch videos and then give them points in the little dumb free game they're watching, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's legal. It's legal. It's within the rules.
That's the addiction.
But they make it addictive. They're letting the kid play some totally silly game, but they have to watch ads on sneakers to get 5 points. Like it blows my mind because obviously it's a slippery slope with all this.
Yeah, for sure. Fortnite parent?
Yeah. What is this Fortnite?
Fortnite. Did you ever watch like Hunger Games or read the books? It's basically that online. So it's 100 players go into a battlefield, and it's very animated. So as opposed to like a Call of Duty where the graphics are very lifelike, it's not. It's avatars and their movements aren't smooth and clean. What's that?
They dance.
Yeah. So, but the goal is to be the proverbial last man standing. So they're working to eliminate the 99 other players. They can work together. So if you did you read the Hunger Games books or?
No, I saw the movie, but
Yeah.
can they chat in this? Is there like
Oh,
talk?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because they want to team up, they want to strategize.
So your kid will be online with his or her friends, all on their headsets, all playing, like they make a date to play Fortnite from their computers at their own houses. And, so it's 7 o'clock, we're all playing Fortnite, so they're all in the same game or whatever it is, the same tranche, and then they kill each other. And then
No,
somebody-
they eliminate.
well, sorry.
But when they all get on, like let's just say my daughter and her friends say they're all gonna log on. Me as the weirdo 40-year-old, can I also get in that
Well,
game
yeah,
with
because it's
random?
100,
Yeah,
they
so-
don't have 100 friends or
So
like.
the game batches together 100
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
the kids can
right.
navigate into it together.
So right, so
But
you're
yeah,
there with
still
your
they're-
friends,
okay.
but they're strangers.
That's all I
there,
want
too.
to know, because
Yeah.
like the bottom line is these outsiders can get in. That I'm trying to figure out like where are the places on her phone or on the computer where all of a sudden somebody can get in. Because if you and I are texting, never does some random person. Well, actually, 2 or 3 times, random people have just texted me, and I'm like, who is this? That could happen to our kid, but in these games, it's like
Right,
there's a ton of it.
right.
There's a
You
ton
can,
of
you can set chat rooms up so that you can only chat and communicate with your friends. You're playing against other people.
But you can't do that, you can't really do that in Minecraft because you need 100 people.
in Fortnite.
I mean in Fortnite, yeah. Minecraft you can't. So Minecraft you can play alone, you can play on a closed server, so only the people who have access to that server.
Can do it.
So that would be like in a private chat, or you can play in the wide open. That's Minecraft. Fortnite, to my knowledge, there's no way because you need 100
I think so.
people. So kids will say, well, I just play with my friends. I'm like, there's no way you just play with your friends.
So even something like this, have you come across schools where the school sets up the Fortnite group? Because it would be this way, like all the kids at British school, it's like when they got into the Fortnite, it's all kids from British school.
Well, there's not the technical ability, I think, to create your own Fortnite server. Like you need a server, to like a closed server in order to say, okay, only the British school, like it's our own server for that game, and that technology doesn't exist to my knowledge. And I'll go back to, I don't think the school wants to get, you can
I'm
speak
just
to
thinking
this.
there's not enough hours in the day to do
Yeah.
the fallouts and the arguments. And
You're trying to cut down how much they're spending, how much time they're spending on this, not creating ways for them to do it. But let's talk through some of these just kind of gaming issues in general. Violence is always a concern. Fortnite, there's a couple different schools of thought. One is, even I jokingly said, no, they don't kill, they eliminate. Like, we want to be clear. But they essentially are trying to
I
kill.
was gonna say, so from my standpoint, it's relatively violent. It's not I have tried to play with my kid and I don't understand how you make the players
people
move, and
move.
so then he gives up and, we're over that by now. But, I think it's pretty violent. I mean, it's not as bad as, I think.
Call of Duty.
Well, I say, so now, of course, since my kid's 13, they're over Fortnite and they're on to whatever is grosser and more realistic
Yeah.
and whatever. And so, I lose in that sense, but
Yeah.
that's violent enough for me.
Yeah, there's violence. I mean, the kids will tell me it's not violent. There's no blood.
Yeah.
There's no guts. And I've read both sides. I've spent a lot of time reading both sides. And the people that say it's violent will say, well, the fact that there's no blood and there's no gore and there's no dead body, because the avatar just sort of
They
poof.
disappear.
It eliminates. Is that kids aren't having to deal emotionally with the fallout of killing someone. Where in Call of Duty, they have to see the blood, the guts, and the dead body. So I don't know. I mean, you can argue it. I'm just telling you the different sides of the argument. It seems the kids will tell me it's not violent. In-app purchases, always be cognizant that exists. That if the Apple ID or whatever is set up with a credit card on it and kids have the password, it was just like you were saying. They had to watch a video in order to get more points. There's a lot of games where that in-app purchase pops up and it's like crack cocaine. Like if you purchase, you're going to get more points, which might keep you alive or give you more weapons depending on the game.
There's a new thing in-app purchases. They have a story on NPR about it today. And as soon as they start, and I forget the name of it, it's like,
Is that a podcast?
well, I'm sure you can get a podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to NPR, they have all the shows from today and
Right.
any day. Let's just call it like a treasure trove. It's something like that.
Yes.
It's a new type of in-app
Yes,
purchase.
I heard this story.
And as soon as I heard it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the same dumb reason why LOLs, like why I have to buy your kids want these LOLs and you don't know what's in them.
Yes.
It's the same with these new in-app purchases.
It's all based on variable reward theory.
Yeah.
That it's more addictive if we don't know what we're getting.
Yeah, so these new in-app purchases.
Yep, I heard the
but
same story.
It's random.
Yep.
So they pay like $9 for it, $9.99, and when they crack it open, it might be like a new skin for their avatar. It might be a new weapon or whatever it is,
Yep.
and they're likening it to gambling.
Yes.
So now I guess the
It's
FCC.
a slot machine.
Yeah, the FCC's involved because the FCC's definition of gambling is: does it require skill or is it random? That's always been the definition of whether something falls in, and they're saying they have to redefine it because. But let's face it, it's like for some, I don't know why, but like just like the LOL dolls, the children for some reason are addicted to something like this random surprise, like you don't know what it is. Whereas like
It's
as
not-
adults,
I
we
mean-
want to know what we're getting for Christmas, but kids, they want the surprise.
No, I mean, I'll give you a quick, I find this stuff fascinating. I hope I'm not keeping you guys too long. We're almost to the end. It's all based, so do you remember the behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner, 1930s? He had the Skinner box with the rat, with the lever. And if the lever, well, the first time he ran his experiment, every time the rat pushed the lever, he got a pellet of food or a drink of water. So what he concluded was that you can condition someone to do what you want to do if you reward them. So then he said, and he tracked how many times the rat hit the lever in the course of an hour. And it was consistent number of times. So basically when the rat wanted one of those rewards. So then he said, I wonder what would happen if the reward schedule was variable. The rat didn't know what he was getting or if he was getting anything. So the rat pushed the lever once, he didn't get anything. He pushed it again, he didn't get anything. He pushed it a third time, he got a pellet of food. He pushed it a fourth time, he got nothing. A fifth time, nothing. A sixth time, a drink of water. What he found out was that the number of times the rat would push the lever, like tripled in the course of an hour. And that's what, this all goes back to slot machines.
Yeah.
That is, we pull a lever, we put a quarter in, we pull a lever, do we get a reward? Oh my God, I didn't win. I put another quarter in. Okay, I won $5. But I might win $1 million. And we just keep, lotto tickets are the exact, all of that is based on a variable reward schedule, which is what these boxes are based on as well. And it's what social media plays on.
What were those boxes called on NPR? You heard
Were they loot boxes?
Loot boxes.
Yeah.
So that's the new thing we got to look out for.
Yeah.
Loot boxes.
So even Instagram, like if I pull up Instagram on my phone and I have a strong signal, when I first pull it up, it's like thinking. It's like it's loading. Have you ever noticed that? It takes like 2 seconds to load. It actually technically doesn't need 2 seconds to load. That's sort of the slot machine wheel spinning, and it's creating anticipation of what am I gonna get? Who am I gonna hear from? Will they have liked what I posted? Do I have new comments? And think about your own, I don't know about you, but when I do post something, I don't post very often, but I post a picture of my kids or vacation or whatever on Facebook or Instagram, I tend to go back far more often to see how many people like it. And I'm a 51-year-old. Think of what a 16-year-old is doing. It's like crack. And they've done studies on the brain, and the white matter of the brain is through MRIs is looking like people are using drugs. So it's scary. Predators go where kids are and where they can establish a relationship. So if I can game with someone and have a common goal and be your partner, it's easy to establish a relationship with you and groom you from there. Addiction, we've just been talking about chat features. And then, I don't know, you said the headsets. Take those headsets off and listen to what the boys are saying. And it's not good. And it's really interesting to get in a classroom of like 6th grade boys and talk to them about this and their logic of how to deal with how they're being attacked. well, I just retaliate back. And I'm like, you guys gotta stop this madness. Some quick hits for you guys. We gotta understand the games they're playing. We kind of, I'm like you, like I look at it, I just don't even get it. And so we tend to go, I don't get it, good luck. And it's really a bad approach. We can learn more about it through things like Common Sense Media, the App Store. Everything has an age rating. Everything has a review. I oftentimes just simply Google, is Fortnite safe for kids? What are the dangers of Fortnite? And you'll get great results that you can read and kind of educate yourself that way. I hate headsets. That was the rule when my kids were younger, is if you want to game online, you can, but you cannot wear a headset. Because once they put those on, we are out of everything that's happening. And there's privacy, which is kind of a bad thing. Keep devices in common areas in your family room. Everywhere you don't want them is probably where you should keep them. Like, I would love to have put that gaming, that Xbox in the basement, like especially the last 2 years. I would have my family room full of 17-year-old cross-country boys after practice. And I just wanted them out. But the fact that they're sort of in that main floor of my house, it just provides another layer of mental security they need to go through before they make a stupid decision. Set time limits and set a gaming curfew. If they're gaming online, realize that the later it gets, the worse the company online becomes. We're in a good place in the Midwest because we don't have a big time zone problem. But like 2 weeks ago when I was in California and I said that, it's true. Like it's 7 o'clock at night, it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and there's no geographic bounds when they're gaming. I tend to think, let's kind of think about it as far as the United States, and try and be aware of what time they're gaming and what time the other time zones are in. But Chicago is in a pretty good spot. This is probably, my guess is you don't have a big problem with this here, sexting.
It happens.
It
I'd
is-
be naive to say no, we don't, because
It is by
we
far,
maybe don't know about it as much as.
yeah, it is, I can tell you, it is by far the greatest problem in middle schools and high schools across the country. This, sadly, drives 50% of my business. It is a direct response. I get calls all the time. We had an incident. And that's like the code word. We had an incident, we'd like you to come and do an assembly. Got some pictures floating around? Yeah. So it's always pictures. And I think the struggle is that kids use the word sexting. And there's sort of some gray area in the word sexting. They can bring in things like relationships and permission. She let me have the picture. She didn't mind that I had. She gave me the picture. But when I work with them, all I want to tell them is this. If you have an image of someone who's under the age of 18, and they're nude or they're semi-nude, you are in possession of child pornography. And when they talk about sexting, it's very interesting because their body language is very telling. When you talk about sexting, they're kind of relaxed. They might snicker and because it's a little, scandalous. But when I say child porn, they all kind of go, oh, it's child porn. So I'll say in 2 minutes that I cover this slide, if you have an image, blah, 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 I'll say it 2 or 3 times. If you send that image on to someone, you have distributed child pornography. That is a crime. Possession and distribution is a crime in all 50 states. It's varying degrees based on the state, but it's a crime, and that's why it's a big deal. So in some schools where they bring me in to do some restorative justice is the fancy word, but basically I'm their punishment. They have to sit with me for a couple hours. And I build a relationship with them pretty quickly and they get comfortable. After they're comfortable, I'll stop and go, so what were you thinking? Like, why'd you guys do this? And they'll go, Mrs. Repking, we knew it was bad. We knew we shouldn't have done it, but we never knew we'd get in so much trouble. We never knew the police would get involved. We never knew we'd get suspended. And I'm like, do you know why now? It's child pornography. That's why. It's a big deal. So I want to get ahead of them instead of sitting with 10 of them after they're in trouble and tell them. It's not a bunch of adults being uptight and not getting that this is how your relationships work and this is part of flirting and this is part of dating. It's illegal. So you can't do it.
How does this start? Like, I'm an adult. Years ago, I got divorced, so I had exposure to online dating, and I get how it starts there. But because what people are like, oh, here's a picture of me in a swimsuit,
it's
and
part
like,
of flirting.
and yeah, it gets to be more aggressive. And with guys, I guess that's much like women would compliment me on how clean any photo I ever sent them was, because I didn't know what guys normally do. But with kids. I'm trying not to use it because this is, because it's recording, I'm not going to say what people send, but with kids, is it like different? Is it like my daughter switches to texting with a boy and he sends a picture of his arm, you know what I mean? Like, is there
Sure.
a formula that you've heard of?
It's a couple different ways.
Okay.
One is, it's exactly the same thing that you described, is that it's this it's part of flirting. So
Okay.
it starts with an arm, and it gets more daring, and that's part of their give and take of the relationship.
Okay.
Statistics show that kids are at home a lot more through high school. They date less. They're less sexually active. The teen birth rate is at an all-time low, and a lot of that is because they're staying at home and they're interacting with their friends via technology versus most all of us. If you want to see your friends on Friday and Saturday night, you went out. So some of that has changed. There is also a lot more pressuring by boys to girls. Send me a picture. And it may not be a dating, flirting situation. It's more of a dare. So they pick a girl and they say, hey, send me a picture. And they push her and push her and push her until she does. Those are great things to research because there's all sorts of data as to why kids sext.
Is it more commonly it's already kind of a romantic interest, or is it like a one-off where
necessarily.
like the popular boy
Yep.
texts the girl who wants to be popular? Like, what
Yeah,
have you heard? What
it's
have you
again,
seen?
like most anything, it's an abuse of power
Okay.
in some situations. Some it's a relationship thing. Some is people have phones on their camera everywhere. They're in a locker room and some girl takes a picture of another girl because she wants to hurt her and sends it on to a boy. And then the boy, so there's a lot of different scenarios to it, but there is a lot of statistics on how many people are being pressured to give pictures up. So there's lots of ways I talk to kids about it when I have time. I also talk about being a leader and stepping up and having conversations with your groups of friends, whether it's on a sports team, in a club, saying, guys, let's just agree not to do this. I worked with a high school volleyball team that was ranked #1 in the state. There were 4 kids who, walking into their senior year, had full rides. One was to Loyola, one was to Ball State, one was to Ohio State, and the captain of the team had a full ride to Stanford. And he probably will be the setter for the Olympic team in a couple of years. So this team was outstanding. The coach had me come in and do this presentation to the team. We went through all this stuff and we got to this slide. And the question always becomes, what happens if I get a picture that I didn't ask for? So you just told me if I possess it, I have child porn. So if I just delete it, am I good? And we ended up having a long conversation, and finally the boy who had a scholarship to Stanford, who was the captain of the team, he just stopped. He goes, Mrs. Repkin, can I say something? And I said, sure. And he stood up and he looked at his team and he goes, guys, you know what? I don't want to have my outside hitter get suspended. I don't want anything to go wrong. I've worked my tail off to get this team to this position. And on top of that, I have a scholarship to Stanford. So I don't want any of these problems. So can we just all agree right now that no one will send any pictures? And then we don't have to worry about who sent what, who has possession, who distributed. And every boy just looked at that captain and goes, yeah. They went on in that training to set up like 5 different online rules that they had as a team. They would never respond to another team online. They would never say anything negative about any other team online. They would never say anything negative about one of their teammates online. They would not post a single picture during the season. And it was just like, all it took was one kid stepping up and being a leader. So those are, like I said, I mean, I think the technology has all of its own issues, but there's tons of opportunity to build these other skills with our kids that we're all dying to see them develop as they become young adults.
And the reason I asked that specific question is because the most effective parenting I've done with my daughter is where I realize there's this dangerous concept, but she's not able to grasp it yet. It's years out. So I start, like, I make a decision years earlier. I start introducing it to her in things that she can understand. So right now I could ask her, like, when I'm with her tomorrow, like, hey, do boys ever dare you to do things on the playground? And she'll come up with a story like, oh yeah, the boy dared us to kick the ball the way the boy, whatever it is. And I'll point out how, it's innocent or not innocent, and I'll start putting it in context, and I'll like remind her, like, remember this, because eventually I'll explain something else, and she'll be like, okay, but then I can build upon it.
Right.
And that's why I want to know how it starts, so like I now know I could trace it back to a dare, because there's all kinds of little dares that go on, and there'll be dares in the gaming, and then there'll eventually be dares in the texting.
Yeah, and without that visual, like having to look at someone and say, send me a picture of your boobs, which 99% of those boys that are asking, they could never do it face to face. So the technology gives them, I always say it gives them muscles that they don't have. We just got three more slides. Creating healthy tech. I believe strongly in creating what I call a digital roadmap or a plan for how you want to roll technology out. Now, your son is 13, and you're like, well, we're already down the path. But you can always do this. You could call it a digital roadmap. You could also, similar to it as some sort of contract. But it's just making a plan with whoever are the decision makers and sitting down and doing it on your time. Because kids have an incredible knack for coming to us at our weakest moments. I feel like we're tired, we're weary, we've walked 100 miles, and that's when they're going to make their pitch to get some app or device that, and they just, like I said, I was the youngest of 10 kids. I made a living wearing my mother down and getting what I wanted, so I know how that works. So there's a million questions you can answer, from when do they get a phone, when do they access social media, what social media can they have, what can they do on gaming, where do they turn their phone in at night, how many hours of screen time do they have. There's so many questions you can answer. You don't have to answer them all. But it just gives you, and if there's other decision makers in the home, the opportunity to get on the same page and be a united front. Because that's one of the biggest problems I see, is that you get divided. You get a parent that says, we're going to be on top of this, we're going to control it, we're going to set limits, and then you have a different decision maker who's like, yeah, let them do what they want. It's not a big deal. They'll be fine. It's kids being kids, or whatever it is. So that helps. I also strongly suggest creating some tech-free space in your home. Find that place. It could be your family room. It could be your kitchen table. It could be the bedrooms where you are tech-free. And here's the key. Everyone in the house has to abide by that rule. It can't just be, kids have to be tech-free at the dinner table. Everybody needs to be tech-free wherever you decide that. For us, it's been our dinner table, and I don't know how we did it. I wish I could remember back when we started it, but it is a beautiful thing. I mean, my kids don't bring technology to the dinner table. They just don't. And if one of them does, there's a little shaming. Like, Cam, no tech. Okay. And my kids, as a result, they have really associated dinner with conversation. Even when they're with their friends, they express frustration that their friends won't put down their phones at dinner. I'll be honest, my daughter, the rest of her life is, I swear I see the top of her head, because she's always like this. But at dinner, I see her beautiful face. And we talk. Sometimes, sometimes dinner is 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 45 minutes. That is never in my control as to how much they want to talk. But at least the opportunity is there. And then similarly, finally, create some tech-free time in your lives. And this is hard. And I got this idea because I work with private clients. So I'll go into their home and we'll talk through a lot of these issues and parameters and contracts. And I was working with a woman who was Orthodox Jewish. And we had like 50 iPads, and we're setting parameters on them and different things. And I'm just a very curious person. And so I'm sitting there, and she was really friendly, and we're chit-chatting about all different things. And I'm asking her lots of questions about observing the Sabbath. And how does this work with no electricity and no cars, and how do you make dinner, and all, just, my brain is always very detail-oriented. And I looked at her, I go, what do you do on Friday nights? And she put the iPad was in her hand, and she put it down, and she looked at me, and she smiled, and she goes, I'll tell you what we don't do. We have no electronics for 24 hours every Friday till Saturday night. And I'm like, wow, 24 hours tech-free every week. And she goes, it is amazing. And I thought, wow, that's really cool that because of her religious beliefs, it allows them to do that. But for the rest of us, could I get like 2 hours a week out of my kids? The funny thing is that when we do it, I am the one that probably has the most like detox that has to happen in the first 15 minutes. But it goes back a lot to that mindfulness. Like I always, when we do it, and after 15 minutes, it's like, wow, this is not like it's relaxing. And I always think at the end, like, why do I have to have this structured family time for me to do it? When I see how good I feel, why can't I do this on my own an hour a day, or half a day on a weekend? I'm not working, nothing's gonna happen, but yet we don't. We don't. So how do we ask our kids to unplug and detox? I will tell you, based on panel discussions I've done with kids and doing it with my own kids and their friends, is that they actually like it. When I run panels, I ask them, what's one thing you change? I wish I were off my phone more. And I just, as a parent, as a mom, I look at them and think, well, then why aren't you? But then I'm like, well, I'm not either. But they can't do it on their own. So if you can find some ways to schedule some set tech-free time, if you can find a set time every week, that's great. The reality of most of our lives is that no week is the same. So maybe you look at your calendar once every 2 weeks and say, Sunday, 3 to 5, we're all home. We don't have any sporting events. We don't have any family obligations. 3 to 5, we're going to go tech-free. Or Friday night, or, it's hard with homework and their reliance on technology. But I'll give them fair warning. We're going to go tech-free Sunday, 3 to 5. Get your homework done. Or plan your homework so that you have to read something, not on your iPad. A woman out in Oklahoma last Tuesday night, she said, we have tech-free Tuesday, just because there's alliteration there. I like it. And then someone said, what about Wi-Fi? Like, no Wi-Fi Wednesday. She's like, I like that too.
No Wi-Fi.
So think about those things, and you can always put those things in your digital roadmap as a family. And then finally, my last thing is, people always ask me about monitoring. Do you guys have any desire to hear about that? Are you ready to get out of here?
The kids are undoing it.
Well, yes, and I'll tell you why.
They get together as
Great
friends and
lead-in.
go in there.
Because monitoring does not replace parenting. Monitoring is a tool that we use, that we don't rely on to keep our kids safe. So it's a tool to help us understand where they are and to cue us when we need to get involved. As far as options, I think if you're you have to sort of decide what you're trying to monitor. Like, are you trying to web filter? Are you trying to monitor screen limits? Are you trying to see visibility into their text? Those are kind of all different issues, and there's nothing that handles all of that. I will say that if they have Apple devices, if you're familiar with the screen time functionality, if you can stay within the native device, it works better than trying to download third-party software. So the screen time on the iOS is pretty good as far as setting limits on things. If your devices are going through Wi-Fi in your house, that Circle by Disney is a good option. It pairs with your Wi-Fi, and then every device that's going through the Wi-Fi, you can manage from your phone or from your device. So if I have that on my phone, it'll say Maeve's iPad, Maeve's phone, Ron's laptop, Liz's laptop, and then I can set limits based on that device. So that's kind of nice.
It's hardware. It's like a router.
Yeah, so it's that bottom left, Circle by Disney, it's that square, which I find ironic. You see the irony of that? Yeah. It's like $99, and you literally just put it next to your router. It pairs with like you just put it there and it magically pairs, and then it pairs with your phone as well, and you're ready to go. That's really good if you have younger kids and they don't have data devices. If they have Wi-Fi on their phone, if they have data on their phone and they want to go look at porn, they just get off the Wi-Fi and they use their data. So if you have younger kids that are really don't have access to data plans, that's really effective. The other nice thing about that is when their friends come in the house and they go on the Wi-Fi, you can regulate that as well, because their device will appear on your phone. And then I'm a big believer that every home should have Google Safe Search enabled. It's a setting on Google, and it helps to filter out porn. It's probably the simplest yet effective tool that you can engage that doesn't inhibit everything else. So a lot of problems with web filtering is that it blocks everything. And kids who are using the internet for homework at home, and they're researching things, everything gets blocked and it becomes nothing but a frustration. So you end up taking it off. But Google Safe Search truly manages really well that it's just blocking truly inappropriate content. So this is my information. I'm going to give you guys, if you want, I'm going to put out a little sign-in sheet, and if you want to give me your email, I write typically 2 articles a month that relate to